Hi all, AD here from Haunts and Jaunts. As always, thank you so much for clicking on the video. Today I'm in deepest, darkest North Yorkshire. I'm on the North Yorkshire moors and I'm at this beautiful church called St Gregory's in Kirkdale. It's Anglo-Saxon. There was a church here from the 7th century, although this isn't the original building. This one was rebuilt between 1055 and 1065. It's got a very unique sundial that actually records all of the rebuilding works, which is really, really rare. So as you can see, it's pouring down with rain, so I'll be spending minimal time out in the graveyard. I'll just be concentrating on the church. So let's go and explore. Today we're visiting St Gregory's Minster, which is tucked away in the quiet valley of Kirkdale in North Yorkshire, and it's probably one of the most important surviving Anglo-Saxon churches in England, and its story begins around AD 750. And although there was no official date of this splendid yew tree, it no doubt has been here since Saxon times. The early church was probably damaged or destroyed during the Viking incursions of the 9th century, and what we see today is largely the result of a rebuild between 1055 and 1065, just before the Norman Conquest. And as we step into the porch here, we can immediately see two Anglo-Saxon coffin lids, and they likely date from between the 8th and the 10th centuries, and they were discovered in 1904, built into the west wall during some restoration work. Their carved crosses confirm they are early Christian memorial stones, probably from the original 8th century church. And also in the porch, we're going to see some protective carvings, also known as witch marks or apotropaic marks, and these were likely scratched in during the medieval or early modern period, and people believed that they would ward off evil. And above the doorway here is the extraordinary Anglo-Saxon sundial, carved between 1055 and 1065. It's one of the most complete pre-conquest sundials in England. The Old English inscription records that Orm rebuilt the church when it had fallen down and become ruined, no doubt because of Viking invaders. It even names the priest at the time Brand and the craftsman Haworth, which is incredibly rare for the 11th century church. So the sundial marked the hours. It was like a mass clock, so it was the daily time of prayers, and this was obviously centuries before mechanical clocks became the norm. And that is, if you want to read it, that's how it is written in Old English. And this very tall, rounded Norman doorway was one of the original parts of the church and would have been built in 1050. So that's 1,000 years people would have passed through that door into the church, and that would have been the old hinge for the old door. Some benefactor boards, I love reading those. The interest were always given to the poor at Christmas. Inside this bell tower there's two bells. One was cast in 1300 and the second one was built in 1500. So that's the view people would have had 1,000 years ago of the pillars and the doorway as they entered into the church. And as we walk into the nave with that tall, high arch, absolutely beautiful. There's loads of memorials on the wall there, and down the bottom you can see the difference in stonework, where there's been many alterations over the centuries. And to the right, just above the pulpit, is a portrait of Pope Gregory I. It's a copy perhaps of a Spanish or an Italian original, but it hasn't been identified, so nothing is known of the circumstances in which the church acquired it. And this was all added in the early 20th century. Absolutely beautiful organ. I wonder how difficult it is to play one of these. Do let me know in the comment. Seems very complicated. The two keyboards and all those buttons and pedals. And as we look at the altar itself, there stands a cross, and its centre is a rose formed from Viking-age wood. And this was discovered in York itself, which is now the Jorvik Viking Centre, and that wood dates back to the 9th or the 10th century. Behind the altar is a stained glass window dating from the late 19th century, likely from the workshop of Charles Kemp, who, if you've watched any of my videos, especially from the south of England in Sussex, you will have seen loads of his work. And the windows and this beautiful reredos was part of the Victorian restoration work which was carried out when the chancel was largely rebuilt. And the piscina on the wall here, where they would have washed the communion vessels, and the water would have run out straight back into the ground outside. There's some extraordinary artefacts in this church, and there's also some outside that still remain in the walls. Now, like the coffin lids outside, these two stones were found in 1904, and they were also outside. And there's two of them. The first one that we're going to look at is said to be, although obviously we don't know, it's more suggested, shall we say, that this is a memorial to Saint Ced, who was the bishop of the Saxons. Whilst quite worn on the top, it has still got some amazing detail around the sides. And that stone in front of it, like the round one, they think may have been a millstone. And they reckon that is the oldest artefact in the church. Absolutely beautiful. And this one, with the fine Anglican cross on it, probably dates from the 7th century, and this one has been claimed to be the memorial to Ethelwald, who was the king of Deria and the son of St Oswald. Although these claims are doubtful, the stones are very fine ones dating from when the church was destroyed by the Vikings. And along the north wall, there's some photographs from years gone by. Sorry, the light is reflecting out the windows. They're quite difficult to see. And along the bottom there, you can see the old stone benches. Very unusual to find those. And there's further fragments dating from the 9th or the 10th century. And some of these show Norse influence in their carvings. I do find it extraordinary that they're just kind of sat on the old benches. And there's several fragments of pre-conquest stones, including the Archer stone and the remains of 2 Norse crosses. And like it says, 5 similar crosses are found outside. I believe this is the Archer stone. I could be completely wrong. As you see, it's dark in here, very limited information. And there's also this rare lead plaque, well, a picture of it, and this would have dated from the 8th or the 9th century. It bears Anglo-Saxon lettering and would likely have been attached to a reliquary or like a bone chest, which would have contained the bones of a saint. So it's a remarkable survival from the medieval times. And that's another, well, I'm expecting it to be a coffin lid. So the font dates to the 13th century. It's octagonal in form, as you can see that, and very typical of the period. It's crazy to think how many baptisms have taken place here for more than 700 years. And around the other side here we'll find some small carved markings on the side which are thought to have been later protective symbols, apotropaic or witch marks if you want to call them. People believe they warded off evil. On the wall here is the list of incumbents stretching back to 1055, and you can see Brand is mentioned there, and he's the gentleman that's mentioned out on the sundial out the front. And in the visitor's book you'll find the signature of King Charles III, who visited the church back in 1998 when he was Prince Charles. Interesting to see modern names alongside such ancient stones. On the east end of the north wall, we're just going to have a quick look at a medieval statue of the Virgin and Child, which they presume is from the 14th century. Now, the faces were deliberately damaged, most likely during the 16th century Reformation, when religious images were defaced across England, and this was found buried outside in the churchyard. And we're also going to have a look, they've got this lovely memory book, isn't that lovely, for the war memorials, and they've got a reference there of all the war memorials in the church, and a special separate book for Canadian soldiers who would have been stationed here during the war. I'm just going to take a quick walk around this rather beautiful graveyard because the weather's atrocious, and I'm going to show you some scratch dials. Now, these were very simple early sundials dating typically from about 1100 to 1600, and they're usually found scratched into the stone walls or buttresses of many medieval churches, and they consist of a central hole which held a horizontal rod to cast a shadow, and that would have radiated out a line, and that would have marked the time for daily services, or more specifically mass. So that's the hole. There's a couple there, and you got to remember back then people didn't have watches or clocks, so this was the only way they could accurately tell the time. And outside there's more fragments of the Pre-Conquest crosses dating from the 8th and the 10th centuries, and this bit is actually built into the wall, and this one actually shows some Norse influence. I believe there's 5 pieces out here, but it was too wet for me to try and find them all. And that sloped ceiling on the side of the building, that is where the heating, it's called the heating room. So that's where the heating for the church comes from. And I think that might be another piece of a Saxon grave. And you can see up here, looking at the tower, you can see the different phases of construction with the different types of brickwork. Anglo-Saxon at the base, Norman, and then medieval above. And there's the later repairs even higher still. So yeah, 3 different types of stonework there. I also found a couple more stones in the graveyard. One looked like a coffin lid, the first one, and the next one I found looks like a Viking hogback one. I couldn't find any more information about that. But it's a fascinating place. From its Viking disruption, Anglo-Saxon rebuilding, the Normans, medieval expansion, this church has remained in continuous use for nearly 13 centuries. Absolutely extraordinary. Another fascinating church here in North Yorkshire. Definitely worth coming up. If you love churches, North Yorkshire is definitely worth a visit, and I haven't even scratched the surface. There's just so many of them. If you did enjoy today's video, if you could please like, subscribe, hit the hype button. All of that costs you absolutely nothing, but it really helps my little channel and helps boost the algorithm. If you want to support the channel a little bit more so I can travel further afield, like to Yorkshire, which is 250 miles away from where I live, then you can use the buy me a coffee link, and then that helps me with my petrol money so I can visit more and more counties and visit more and more churches. But I'll definitely be coming back to North Yorkshire when time allows, because there's so many hidden gems like this. So anyway, thanks again for watching. I'll see you for the next one. It might be a haunt, it might be a jaunt, who knows. Bye for now.